No nie muszę tutaj długo go przedstawiać. Pan Jack Spencer jest wiceprezesem The Heritage Foundation. The Heritage Foundation jest jednym z najbardziej wpływowych think-tanków na świecie. A pan Anton Kim jest research managerem The Heritage Foundation. Tak, pan Jack Spencer opowie najpierw nam ogólnie o wolności gospodarczej. Pan Anton Kim później wspomniał kilka słów o indeksie publikowanym przez The Heritage Foundation. Wydaje mi się, że powiedziałem już wszystko, so I give you the floor, Mr. Jack Spencer.
Thank you so much. I want to first of all thank the Warsaw School of Economics so much for having us here today. I want to also thank the Warsaw Enterprise Institute for making not just this lecture possible, but so much of what we've done the last couple of days so easy, and we've been able to have some great meetings, and hopefully this one will fit into that. So what we're going to talk a little bit about today is economic freedom. I'll sprinkle in some of my thoughts on free market economics generally, and then I'm going to hand it over to Anthony Kim, who will go into some detail with the Heritage Foundation's flagship product, the Index of Economic Freedom. So I'd like to start today by asking the question, what is economic freedom? You all may know that, but I'll just throw an answer out there to sort of help frame what we're talking about today. It's the freedom to choose how to produce, sell, or use our own resources while respecting the others' right to do the same. I would add in without government intervention. Why does that matter? I want to list off two groups of countries. Hong Kong, Singapore, New Zealand, Switzerland, and Australia. Here's another list. Turkmenistan, Zimbabwe, Venezuela, Cuba, and North Korea. Any idea what the connection is between these two lists of countries? I'll tell you. They are the top 5 in our Index of Economic Freedom, and they are the bottom 5 of the Index of Economic Freedom. In almost every measurable way, the people in economically free countries are better off than those in the least economically free countries. And that's precisely why the Heritage Foundation takes the time every year, puts forth the resources, and has been doing so for how many years, Anthony?
22 years.
22 years to produce this document. We measure 4 basic pillars of economic freedom: the rule of law, limited government, regulatory efficiency, and open markets. And within those 4 pillars, we have 10 metrics that we measure, which Anthony, I'm sure, will tell us about. So what does that mean in real life? How does it or should it impact policies? It's quite simple, really. For all of the issues that we grapple with in the public policy world, I would argue in our personal life, our business lives, every aspect of life, economic freedom, I believe, takes us to where we want to go. Building prosperity, attacking poverty, having a clean environment, building a social safety net, securing energy supplies, on and on. Economic freedom helps us achieve those objectives. Now, why is that? Why is economic freedom so powerful? It works because it gives individuals the ability to pursue our own interests, and we know better what's best for us, ourselves, our businesses, and our communities than any government, bureaucrat, or politician ever could. But here's the key, I would argue, the magic of economic freedom. It's not just that I, pursuing my own interest, leads to good things. It's that I can't buy or sell my buddy Anthony here anything unless he's willing to participate freely in that interaction. So as a result of that interaction, we're both better off. But not just this interaction, It's the thousands of interactions, the millions of interactions, the billions of interactions that occur every day around the world and have for years that all together lifts society up, makes us all better off. Adam Smith referred to this phenomenon as the invisible hand. I'm going to read this card word for word because I want to get it right. Adam Smith would argue that the culmination of all these interactions, free people exercising their free will in a free market, acts as an invisible hand, distributing scarce resources in the most efficient and moral way possible. I would agree with that. I would even take Smith's argument a step further. The free market is more than just people exercising free will. I would argue that the free market, the marketplace, be it free or otherwise, the marketplace is always what it is. It's the way we interact with it that matters, whether it's free or not free. It's a force of nature. I would argue that the marketplace represents a state of general equilibrium. The marketplace will take anything, an idea, a product, or an action, and it'll give us value information on that. It'll give us information on that thing's value. We can then use that information to guide us. What we cannot do is ignore it or act against it. What Adam Smith might tell us is that you can either allow the invisible hand to guide you, or you can fight it. But if you choose to do so, that invisible hand will ultimately punch you right in the face. I would suggest that's exactly what government intervention into economic affairs represents. It's the government ignoring what the market is telling us. The result is inefficiency, lower innovation, and stagnation. In the real world, that means fewer jobs, lower wages, higher debt, and so on. And ultimately, these will all lead to us all being punched right in the face. And with that, Anthony Kim. Thank you. Thank you, then with that. Yeah.
So good afternoon. Are you guys having fun? And thanks for giving us this very important, I may say, and productive session, I hope, we can do together. So we are not here to teach you. Obviously, we are not professors. We are not teachers. But we are here because we care about two things. One, economic freedom. I think you guys like economic freedom too. Freedom is good, yes? And we love economics. And we care about Poland. So that's why we are visiting Poland, Warsaw, and Warsaw School of Economics. If I may ask, what's your major? I'm sure everybody would say economics, right? Is there any biology major here? Chemistry major? No, right? I just walked around a little bit inside this building. I feel the intellectual power of your school. I mean, to me, it seems like you guys are the future of this great country. And Poland is land of opportunity, and your intellectual power will make that happen. Right? That's why you're attending this school, right? If not, please say no, please. Huh? And I'm going to pass around sort of little summary about Index of Economic Freedom that Jeff was talking about. And let's see what economic freedom means and what kind of application we're talking about here. And then ultimately, let's talk about a little bit on why economic freedom matters. Again, we are not here to lecture you all, so if you have any questions, you can stop me, you can raise your question. We want to have a very engaging dialogue with you. So while I'm talking, I'm going to pass this around. Your colleagues. I hope I have enough copies, but just in case. If not, we'll share. And I want to show you, this is the full version of the book. It looks like a textbook, right? Some schools around the world, they actually use this Index of Economic Freedom as a textbook. What it does is really demonstrate the power of freedom, especially economic freedom. And we have been doing this over the past 22 years in partnership with a newspaper called Wall Street Journal. You guys read that every morning, right? You guys read every morning Wall Street Journal to see what's going on around the world. So This has been a great reference tool, especially economic policy reference tool. So after you graduate from Warsaw School of Economics, I'm sure you will consider many different career options. It could be journalism, it could be getting PhD, or it could be going into private sector. Maybe it could be something like joining the government sector to be a policymaker. Especially if you're interested in economics, as you obviously are interested in. I think this book can be a great reference tool. So enough about PR, right? We've been talking about index and let's get into some details. If you look at this book, there are many information, many data points. I know you guys care about data points too. I know statistics, econometrics, you guys do that all week, all months, right? You play with Excel file to come up with your paper, to make your paper looking good in terms of different chart and visuals. Our index provides that kind of databases as well. So over the past 22 years, we've been measuring countries' business environment, entrepreneurial environment, investment environment. And how do we do that? If you go to page number 5 here, you will see a little table. And we say here, 10 economic freedoms. And there you see 4 pillars of economic freedom. The first pillar is rule of law. Everybody has a copy back then? No? Not enough copy? Yeah, I have one more.
Here's one more.
And so let's share. I know you guys are willing to share, right? So there are 4 pillars of economic freedom. Rule of law, government size, regulatory efficiency, and open markets. And underneath those 4 pillars, we have what we call 10 economic freedoms. There can be, as a starting point, property rights and freedom from corruption. If Poland has a lot of corruption problem and weak protection of property rights, what can you expect? You cannot have any dynamic, lasting economic growth. What does that mean? After graduation of this school, you are not going to get any fun jobs. Your job market will be not dynamic. Let's look at the second point, government size. This is more or less about how we maintain the government limited. We don't want to have a big government. If you have a big government, we become like a socialist country, like Venezuela. Do you guys know about Venezuela, what's happening there? It's downhill, people cannot buy toilet paper, hyperinflation. You cannot buy, those necessary things. What's happening in Russia? Ooh, you guys know exactly what's happening in Russia. So without limited government, if you have a big government, you're in trouble. Your future is not bright. And also regulatory efficiency. There, we're really talking about how we can help, how policymakers can help entrepreneurs. You're the future entrepreneurs. Business freedom, investment freedom, labor freedom, that kind of key ingredient of economic activity. And last but not least, open markets. Era like today, globalization, you need to trade things with other countries. Whatever small and big, you have to exercise your competitive advantage. How do you do that? You engage with the rest of the world through trade. As Jack was saying, trade is something very good. We exchange our ideas, we exchange our goods, we exchange our labors, so that we can make better things in an efficient way. But the best way of doing it is through mutually agreed, free and transparent, two-way transaction. Some people say, no, trade is good, but export is good. We don't like import. So we're going to just do export, export, export. No import. But that's not fun. That's just one way of transaction. Some countries, they are so good at just exporting things, but it cannot be sustainable. I mean, how can you just export? To make something, to manufacture something, you have to import those things that you don't have, and of course you have to import ideas. You can say, yeah, that sounds good, maybe, yes, economic freedom, I see your point, but I still think that the government is important. Government should play a certain role in guiding certain sectors and industry. Maybe government can create jobs. That's basically socialist policy, right? I mean, in a way, your older generation went through that kind of process. I think it's fair to say your grandparents, your father, your mother, they didn't like it. They wanted to have a new future, new economic dynamism. And that's why you guys, since 1989, when you got this new economy, new opportunity, your policymakers and thinkers put together free market-based economic policy. And that's why Poland, if you look at over the past 10 years, even beyond those 10-year period, your economic growth has been very impressive. Maybe you don't feel it, physically yet, but the fact that you may be enjoying something like this mobile phone, right? You may engage with your friends through Facebook, Twitter, or whatever. I mean, who can invent this without economic freedom? This is basically embodiment of economic freedom and the power of freedom. In certain parts of the countries, the world, they use it as a sort of political tool as well. I don't know how much you are familiar with the Arab Spring, for example. They not only economic freedom, but they wanted to have a political freedom too. So what did they do? They got, they demanded greater economic freedom because freedom is not something that government can, okay, here's your freedom, use your freedom. It's not something that government can dispense. You have to demand freedom. That means you have to demand greater accountability, transparency, and open markets so that your idea and your future can go somewhere higher level. If you look at our index, I want to show you something quick here. Here, page number 2, we say highlights of the 2016 index. And here's one single chart I want to draw your attention to. So economic freedom, it sounds like a bit of abstract concept, but what we're really talking about is those economic policies that can empower individuals, you and me, students, teachers, businessmen, whoever. We want to empower those individuals with a greater opportunity. If we do that, what happens? That means greater prosperity. If you use your Excel file and do correlation, quick correlation, not rocket science correlation, you will see very positive and strong correlation between economic freedom and prosperity. And this single chart shows that. Countries that have greater economic freedom tends to enjoy a high level of economic dynamism, greater job opportunities, and greater overall well-being. I mean, here I'm not just talking about economic freedom in monetary terms or financial terms. I mean, economic freedom is not just about how much money I have, you have, how much money I can spend on my leisure time. The bottom line is it's about choice. Economic freedom gives you choice beyond monetary terms. Economic freedom is about utilizing those choices and grabbing these new opportunities and making greater prosperity happen for you and for your family members and for a greater number of people. So it's not just about economic freedom can give you an opportunity to buy BMW. I mean, it doesn't matter what kind of car. It depends on your choice, and it depends on your certain financial constraint. So it requires both sides of the equation, meaning freedom and responsibility. And there, I want to highlight once again the role of the government. There are certain things that government should do, like providing strong rule of law, fighting against corruption, securing property rights, and more than anything else, strong national defense. But other things that can be done through free market system, that can be done by individual choices. And if we say, well, government can solve every problem, then we should go to North Korea. It's supposed to be heaven. Everything's just fine, everybody's happy, you don't have to worry about any lack of whatever resource. Let's go to North Korea altogether, yeah? But what do you see there? No system, no functioning system. This young, crazy dictator guy, very strange hairstyle, he's ruining every economic livelihood. So economic freedom is not really a foreign concept. This is something we should demand. We should study, and we should demand from politicians and policymakers and the government. And we have to limit the size and scope of the government so that they can properly spend your money, your tax. If you just say, oh yeah, it's okay as long as you give me this for free, if you give me education for free, if you can give me my vacation time for free, maybe up to a certain time frame they can do that. But beyond that, ultimately, it will take away all the economic opportunities you have, because in order to do so, the government needs certain financial means. They tend to do so through taxation. So there's always the freedom part and responsibility part. And that's not just for the government. It's for everybody. It's for the individuals, it's for the families, it's for the private companies. So if you look at the very first page of this chart, and there's the rankings of the countries we measure in our index. Our index measures 186 economies around the world, and based on those criteria I briefly talked about, we measure countries' economic freedom, economic competitiveness, according to those 10 economic freedom factors. Any of you guys have already found where Poland stands? And if you did so, where's Poland? I don't see Poland.
On the edge.
And Poland is number what? 39th.
Yeah.
Not bad. Really, not bad, because we are covering, once again, and grading 186 economies. And Poland is way ahead of many others. But there are some countries that are ahead of the Poland. I see countries like, Estonia. In the top, I see countries like New Zealand and Switzerland. And I also see Iceland, I see Georgia. But in Europe, I see countries like France and Italy, they are behind you. I don't see France and Italy around you or ahead of you. It's far below than where you are. So what I'm trying to convey is that this document, this policy reference will give you the perspective, where you are today and where you want to be. Because it's ultimately, it's individual's choice that make our economy grow and go to the next level. If you want to have a greater capacity of innovation, you will need market openness, regulatory efficiency, and rule of law. I don't think North Korea can invent something like this. Their capacity, their innovation capacity, their market transaction capacity cannot afford something like this. But United States, not because it's a huge, big country, but because the United States, in general and on average, it's been very good environment for entrepreneurs. It's been very good environment for commercial transaction. Not only in the United States, but some other countries in Europe. And nowadays, increasingly, these Baltic countries, your northern neighbors, they are trying to embrace greater level of economic freedom and try to be more competitive economy. So, I just want to make sure that we are on the same page on one thing. Economic freedom matters. And you have to demand greater economic freedom as you study and as you graduate and then join the private sector or public sector. Because once again, the government will not be dispensing you, okay, today I'll give you this much of economic freedom, tomorrow I'll give you this much of economic freedom. They don't do that kind of thing unless you really demand greater economic freedom by participating in civil society debate and in democracy. So ultimately, economic freedom brings in greater democracy. I mean, we can talk about the relationship between economic freedom and political freedom maybe entire day, maybe 1 week. It's not an easy relationship to define. But as people get greater economic freedom, they're able to make better choices and more choices. And then ultimately that will lead to greater political participation as well, and therefore political freedom will come. Some people say, hey, look at your index ranking. On top there's Hong Kong and Singapore. I mean, there are two tiny city economies, and even Hong Kong, it's not a really country, it's part of China. How can you do this? But Hong Kong still maintains a certain level of independence in terms of economic policy making. Yes, and Singapore is very much different democracy in a way. It's a one-party system. It's not a communist party, but it's a very strong leader, Lee family. They've been presiding the Singaporean economy. But the bottom line is they offer transparency, accountability, and the rule of law, strong rule of law, so that people can participate in economic transactions and activities. And if you look at China, you've been hearing a lot about China. China's economy, China's economic struggle, where this country is going, why China is growing fast, despite the fact that China's economic freedom is not high. Think of it this way. China, by the way, it ranks in our index 134. No, I was wrong. Where's China?
144.
144, even worse than last year. But China is like a young baby. If you are able to grade China back in 1970s, 1980s, again, if you are able to grade China, I think China's economic freedom was probably 0. But now, it's slightly over 50 points, according to our index. That means China, despite the slow progress, they've been embracing certain aspect of free trade bit by bit. But let's remember, China is still a communist country. The old majority of economic activity has been dominated and dictated by party system. But China was, in a way, wise enough to embrace certain aspect of free market system, like trade. China is member of WTO. Is it responsible member? Well, that's debatable. But China has been opening up, and therefore, they can gain certain level of economic freedom and prosperity. So China's case really offered you the relationship, the real-time relationship between economic freedom and prosperity. And perhaps I'll give you most telling examples why economic freedom matters. Now, let's take one step back. I was introduced by Jack. My name is Anthony Kim. So Kim's my last name. Am I from China? Can you guess? No? Who said Korea? Very good. You must be attending Warsaw School of Economics. Now the big question is, so my last name is Kim and I'm from Korea, but the big question is, am I from North Korea or South Korea?
Obviously South.
Why you say obvious?
Well, if you were you from North Korea, you wouldn't be there, I think, because they wouldn't let you through the border.
That's good. North Korea, they tend to limit, they control people's movement, right? Good guess. Any other comments? Why I am from South Korea, as this gentleman accused me of? Why? Well, I'm just joking. Obviously, I'm from South Korea. I have nothing to do with the funky hairstyle guy came up in North. I'm a bit taller than those usual average North Koreans, right? And I look okay. I'm not handsome, but I'm okay, right? And I'm talking to you, right? North Korea, South Korea, it's basically one country, right? Same location. Northeast Asia, same people. Kim, South Korea, Kim, North Korea, a lot of Kims, Lee, Park. About the same weather situation too, cold weather, hot weather during the summertime. The only difference between North and South, ideas and system. One country embraced democracy and free market system. Its northern neighbor, they've been denying it. They've been just using some of freedom, some of the economic energy for a few people that are specially connected to dear leader Kim. And the rest of the people are suffering from the lack of opportunities. I mean, we're all human beings, but because of these ideas and the lack of freedom, people in North Korea, they are just suffering from the lack of opportunity to see you, to meet you, to come to Warsaw School of Economics and pursue their own opportunities. So what I'm trying to convey is that economic freedom is not really something abstract. It matters and it brings real difference over time. And I think you should be proud of your country's modern history, especially since 1989. When you start transform your economy, you have come a long way. And now, the country's future is dependent on you. What kind of thinking frame you have. What kind of government you want to pursue. What kind of economic debate you want to have. I think you guys talk about these things every day, right? When you smoke, when you drink, This is a debate you're having, right? So, economic freedom really matters. Now, we say North Korea, right? Anybody knows North Korea's former full name? Some people say it's a DPRK. That's North Korea's full formal name. So DPRK is Democratic People's Republic of Korea. They have those good things in their country name. Democratic People's Republic of. But their system is really the denial of democracy and freedom and people's opportunity. So what matters is really ideas. Ideas bring difference. Ideas bring consequences. We are once again very pleased to be in this idea incubators. Warsaw School of Economics. You guys may go through different economic theories and everything, but ultimately, what should be caring about is economic freedom, how you can maintain a higher level of economic freedom in Poland, and how you can further advance economic freedom, greater future. And I think that's why think tank like Warsaw Enterprise Institute, the role of civil society is very critical. And student body like independent association, yeah, it's a freedom-based sort of civil society function. So each one of you guys have a special mission to carry on. You are not just come to school to meet your friends and talk about things. You have a very special mission in this vibrant democracy. And we're trying to be part of that discussion. We had a number of good meetings with your policymakers, and I'm sure that many of you already been to the United States and Poland. We've been having very good dynamic relationship for the past 2 decades, and a lot more to come. But we have to work together. We have to study together. We have to demand greater economic freedom together. So, let me just stop right here, and then you may have some burning questions, some negative comments about our index of economic freedom or economic freedom in general. You may be thinking to yourself, what the hell is this guy talking about? I mean, what economic freedom and why is he visiting Poland? And what is economic freedom? I don't get it. Whatever burning questions you may have, let us know, and let's talk about those. You seem to have some questions. Yes.
Why isn't Liechtenstein included in the ranking?
Liechtenstein, Why not? Yeah? See, you must be smart guy, yeah? You already skimmed through the rankings and you're asking that tough question, right? No, I mean, Liechtenstein is another European country, beautiful and small, nearby Switzerland, right? They speak German, they have this banking sector going on. But the funny thing is, somehow they don't provide updated, credible economic data to international organizations. I don't think they have anything to hide, but somehow they choose not to report those basic economic statistics to internationally recognized data sources. So therefore, we cannot really grade Liechtenstein. I mean, we cannot just say, oh, Liechtenstein is number 5. We cannot do that, right? But Poland, as a member of World Bank, IMF, WTO, your central bank and Ministry of Finance, they beautifully provide those data because you are transparent and you want to talk about your economy. So there's that difference between Poland and Liechtenstein. Yes?
I have a question. What do you think of TTIP? Will that improve economic freedom, unlike the cooperation between the states and, for example, Poland?
What is TTIP, by the way? Anybody knows?
I know.
Oh, you know. You think you know?
No, I know the transatlantic trade and investment partnership.
Transatlantic investment and trade partnership. So there's no mentioning of free. They conveniently drop the free, right? So it's just investment trade partnership. It could be free or it could be regulated, right? And United States and European Union, they've been negotiating these some kind of pact over the past year or so, but we don't know the final outcome yet. So they are trying to make it some kind of trade and investment partnership. But I think Jack will elaborate on this further, but I think what we care about is freedom to trade, not necessarily free trade agreement. I mean, it's good that countries are trying to have some kind of free trade agreement, but I think you and I, all we have to care about is we want to ensure our freedom to trade individually or company-based or country to country in a transparent manner.
I just add quickly to that. Look, the fact of the matter is we don't know what's in that agreement. And we would love if we see it and it advances free trading and it doesn't advance some regulatory harmonization or whatever those things are. We believe, I believe, that free people should be able to have economic exchange with one another over international borders, absent government intervention, so long as you're not acting illegally. Knock yourself out. And anything that advances our ability to do that, if that's what TTIP is, sign me up. The unfortunate thing is, because it's been so private, behind closed doors, you have these little leaks, you have these different chapters, it doesn't look like that's necessarily the direction that we want it. So I want to be able to support TTIP, I want to be able to support anything that advances free trade. Whether it does or not, I don't know, so I can't tell you right now what it will.
And another thing is that since this TTIP is being negotiated between the United States and European Union, it may be a bit too controversial. Poland is already small and dynamic economy. You've been enjoying a certain level of free trade with your neighbors through different means. By having this TTIP, you may get into unintended disadvantage because certain things you may have to give up. I don't know. We don't know the final outcome yet. But once again, regardless of what kind of trade agreements we pursue, as an individual, responsible citizen, I think what we can do is let's demand greater transparency, greater economic freedom, and ultimately greater freedom to trade between people.
I do think there's an opportunity with TTIP if people, right now the argument seems to be whether you're free trade or not free trade. It's a far more nuanced argument than that. I'm pro free trade, I don't know where I am with TTIP. And because it's still being negotiated, one of the things behind closed doors, I think if those of us who support free trade, we might be able to put pressure on that, to push it in that direction. I don't know, but there's at least an opportunity there. Other questions? You had. Go ahead, you.
I have a question about elections in that are going to...
It took three people before we got to the US elections.
Yeah, but what's your ideas about that? Which candidate would provide us with more economic freedom?
You're not going to like my answer to this one.
But I'm curious.
No, because I really can't answer. The Heritage Foundation, we're what's called in the United States a 501c3. And a 501c3 can't get involved in politics. And by me answering that question, it could imply that I support or don't support a candidate. So I just can't talk about that. What I will say, though, is you can look at the candidates and probably figure that out on your own. And having me say one thing or another will probably not enlighten you at all. And or if you haven't looked at what they say, take a few minutes and look at what they say, you'll be able to answer the question yourself.
That's a good question, but I think it'll take some more months to have real sort of discussion on this.
So I'm sorry I couldn't answer that one.
Yes, ma'am.
It's impossible to talk about American politics until the end of Polish. As far as I know, we saw a development plan of Deputy Prime Minister Morawiecki. Is it possible that by undertaking such steps, Polish position will be better in the Index of Economic Freedom in 17?
Actually, that's a great question because that really connects the policy-making process on the ground and how much impact that kind of policy tweaking or tuning or options will impact on your overall economic freedom performance in our Index of Economic Freedom. The short answer is, I'm not sure. But we know one thing. I think it seems to us, as an observer, outside observer, there seems to be a greater demand from greater number of people. We need certain things, social spending. We want to see greater social spending here. I want you to take care of these things. I want to have this and that. So it seems to be there's a pressure on government. You have to spend more. You have to tax more, therefore. We'll be okay with it. I think that kind of fiscal pressure will negatively affect your country's overall economic freedom. Because your government is already spending over 40% of GDP. That's a lot of money. United States also spend around 39%, but your government is spending some more compared to the United States. So if they spend it wisely, perhaps we won't have any problems. But as you build this social and welfare kind of demand, putting on government function and fiscal policy, I think it's inevitable that certain costs must be shared by many individuals. And your future may be negatively affected by that kind of fiscal pressure and fiscal constraint. So quite frankly, we think that your policy makers, they're facing a great challenge, how to resolve this demand for greater spending versus more dynamic economy. It's not easy, but we hope that they have really constructive debate and come up with a free market-based economic strategy.
Let me just add one thing to that real quick. We saw a plan, and I don't know how far along it is or whatever, but from what I saw, and this isn't, Anthony does the index, so what I'm about to say is just my comments on the plan, not how it may affect the index, is that what concerned me about this from what I saw, it's not the social spending part, I understand that, but there's a lot of tweaking of the economy, a lot of recognizing problems, and instead of maybe recognizing the underlying systemic issue, trying to tweak it by putting the thumb of government on the scales here and here. It's like the Dutch boy in the dike. You run out of fingers eventually. So there's some of that involved in what I saw. So, but I don't claim to be an expert on those things.
And I just want to draw your attention to this, country pages, Poland country page. The little version you guys have, it doesn't have that, but you can get this information from heritage.org/index. You can get some PDF copy of this page. And as you will see there, the trend line over the past 5 years or Poland has been very positive. Every year, bit by bit, your economic freedom has been improving, advancing towards greater economic freedom level. Now, as Asha sort of cast, so what's going to happen to next year? Again, we'll have to look into specific numbers and policies that will be implemented, but we certainly hope this positive trend line of economic freedom for Poland continues. Now, what we really want to convey is that whatever policy choice they will make, it should be about empowering you once again. It should be about giving you greater future and opportunities, not taking away your opportunities and your financial means in the name of welfare. We don't want to see you, probably, you don't want to be dependent on a government program. As a responsible, independent individual, you probably want to pursue your own dream within rule of law and within business freedom, investment freedom, that kind of entrepreneurial environment. You don't want to be dependent on government programs. So there are things that I think you will have to pay attention to. Maybe you have to raise your voice as well as you go. Yes, questions?
More general, because as you announced the index for 22 years, yeah? What do you think, what is the general tendency? We have more economic freedom than 10 years before or less?
You must be president of this association. That's another good question. So the good news is, you know, we talk about globalization, the danger and the negative impact of globalization, environmental damage and everything. But over the past 22 years, now we can talk about longer term trend. I mean, trend line is important, right? If you look at this chart on page 3, you will see over the past 22 years, the global economy as a whole, its economic freedom has been improving. That means greater number of people, whoever they may be, in Europe, in Asia, in Africa, in South America, they wanted to have a greater economic freedom. So the net outcome is every year, ups and downs over the past 22 years, but overall trend line has been positive. So global economic freedom has been advancing, and therefore global poverty level has been declining. So that's good news. But now the bigger question in front of us, how can we ensure this progress can continue? I mean, we want to make sure that not just to sell a lot of iPhones and cars and stuff like that, how can we expand opportunities for greater number of people? I think that should be the focus of global economic policy. Yes?
Yes, in this rating, I can see that Poland is on place 39, right? Which is kind of a surprise because we all know that Poland is not one of the most developed countries in Europe. And we still can see Italy, Spain, and France a lot more down there. So why is this exactly happening? And is it maybe in some points comfortable for those countries, you know, to be in that type of thing? And if it's not, what are they doing to improve their?
That's another good question. So first thing is that, you know, economic freedom, it doesn't have to do with anything, say, the country's size or development level. I mean, that's not what we are measuring. What we are measuring is the environment, the policy and business environment for individuals and companies to participate in economic transaction and economic process. If you look at specific policy areas, for example, Italy, it has higher taxation than Poland. It has a higher tax rate than your government is imposing on you. And also, if you look at the corruption level in Italy, should we get into details? I don't think I have to. I mean, you love to visit Italy probably for a short visit and stuff like that. But if you try to do business, if you try to start a company in Italy, it takes way more than what it takes here in Poland or in Estonia or other parts of Europe. And therefore, in Italy, you have a huge presence of informal economy. black market under the table. Those things are not recorded, but they just do just people-to-people transaction. So overall business environment is not as transparent as it should be, and overall business and investment environment is not really predictable in Italy. And that's why you see this difference. It's not just about economic development level, it's about the policy environment we are trying to measure. And
I was just going to say a good example is Estonia, a country that is small, not as economically developed, but they are rising quickly in the index. I think they're number 9 this year. And that's because they tried to create an environment, or I shouldn't say try, they are creating an environment that is very inviting for economic activity. And they're very successful. They continue to engage with us and others on how they can continue to make their policies that are more open for economic exchange.
So just quickly, if you look at the very first page of this inside cover, we have 5 what we call free economies. Now we have 6 regional leaders. If you look at these guys, I mean, it's not all like developed and large economies. Hong Kong, Singapore, New Zealand, Switzerland, Australia, in terms of size and GDP, it's really very, very different. What they have in common is good policies that promote economic freedom for their citizens. And also in each region, you have what we call the leaders of economic freedom. In North America, where we cover Mexico, United States, and Canada, you may say United States should be the leader of economic freedom. We used to be, but not anymore.
We say that too, by the way, that we should be.
So Canada is the leading country in terms of economic freedom in North America. If you go to Africa, I don't know how many of you know about this country called Mauritius. It's another small, it's island nation, but they have a very extensive sort of period of economic reform. They put good policies in place. In South America, Chile. Chile has gone through a lot, but again, through good policies and free market thinking, and then good policy making process, the country has been able to maintain higher level of economic freedom. We'll go, you and me.
I have a question. Because in the index you can see that the Scandinavian countries, Denmark, Norway, etc., scored quite high, and at the same time many people like to take these countries as the examples of, let's say, successful mommy welfare states.
Yes.
How is that possible?
That's a great question.
I'm interested in something.
Yeah. So, I think that question itself really presents a great venue where Poland is nowadays. Now, these Scandinavian countries, they are known for welfare states. They spend a lot, almost everything there is free. They just give out, free education, free healthcare, free. It's their social compact. It's their social contract that they are agreed on with the government and private citizens. Somehow, they said, I don't care about my tax, how much I'm being taxed, as long as I get this kind of good service from the government. But at the same time, those governments in Scandinavian countries, they made sure they have functioning free market system in place, meaning they have a very good regulatory efficiency. Their markets are generally open, and they have a very strong rule of law. Corruption in Scandinavian countries is pretty amazing, very low, amazingly low. So if you think about, say, IKEA, it's from Sweden, right? What do you think about IKEA? To me, it's like efficiency and flexibility. I mean, it's so easy to make things.
Have you ever actually been to an IKEA, Anthony? Because it is not efficient or flexible. It's like a furniture hell where you. I'm just making fun of the. I like the names.
Yeah. And then Denmark, it is known for Lego. Lego is also a very efficient way of making blocks and stuff like that. So what I'm conveying is, as much as they have a really high government spending in the name of social welfare, other policy areas they do have a really, really high level of market openness and regulatory efficiency and strong rule of law. And that makes the difference. And that's the debate probably you guys will have to confront. The debate you will have is about the scope and the size of the government. I mean, if you want to have that kind of free goodies, if you want to have a nanny state in Poland, it's your choice. Maybe you will make that decision. But the shape of that government, we don't know yet. If this government doesn't provide regulatory efficiency on an open market and greater and stronger rule of law, your direction, the future direction, can be on the path of, I don't know, some other countries, developing countries we talked about.
I have a question about your point of view about the European Union. What do you think about that? Because on the one side we have free trade union, but on the other side there are some voices that are more and more regulations. And what do you think?
I mean, to me, I think European Union, I'm sure you guys been experiencing it. You know, the good things of European Union, bad things of the European Union. But to me, as an observer in a distance, I think we need more competition probably with the EU in general. Things being driven by in the name of harmonization, but that sort of made a negative impact on certain individual countries. Perhaps, I don't know exactly, but it may have affected Poland in a negative way too. So it's time to upgrade maybe the European Union. I don't know how much internal pressure they may have, how much external pressure they may have, but we cannot go on as it is. European Union, it sounds great, but it's like having a big government too. Whatever they decide, you will have to follow that decision for certain degree.
And what's your point of view on the long-term plan of huge public-funded investment in Europe?
Again, I think we don't believe huge publicly sponsored project cannot be sustainable. Somebody, one way or another, have to pay for the price. And I don't know how good they are in terms of really making those infrastructures. It's a huge investment, right? So ideally, we want to see really free market driven, private sector driven, the real win-win cooperation between citizens and companies. Government can guide certain vision, provide certain visions, but actually doing it, we believe should be done by the private sector and free market forces.
In this index, we can see that position number 138 is Greece. The second worst was the result in the whole Europe. I think it's because of regulations that came from European Union institutions because of crisis. Do you think that is a good strategy or not?
Again, I mean, Greece has a very weak institution in place. I mean, again, it's a great country to visit, but it's a terrible country to do a business. I mean, corruption there and public service, I mean, it's not getting any better. It's not because of the financial crisis or ongoing economic turmoil they are going through. Even before the 2008 financial crisis, Greece has been known for tax evasion, informal market, weak rule of law, and corruption. So it's not just really something new. The country has been suffering from, citizens of that country, been suffering long years before the crisis. And I think it's, the fault of policymakers. They had a wrong vision. They thought they will be able to provide those things for free, but they are now paying really heavy price in terms of that kind of policy approach.
The invisible hand is punching them in the face.
That's exactly what's happening. I mean, Greece, it's a beautiful country. People there, they care about freedom. It's the birthplace of modern democracy. But where is economic dynamism? They've been taken away by big government. Any other questions?
When we talk about crisis, what do you say about crisis in 2008 in
more economic freedom, because once revolution had economic freedom and made what they made. So,
The people,
who is responsible for that?
the government, man. The government's responsible for those things. Anyone who tells you that the 2009 crisis was as a result of liberalism and deregulation simply doesn't know what they're talking about. The financial markets were incredibly regulated back then. Housing policy in the United States was driving institutions, banks, to give loans to people who shouldn't have them. There was a whole system in place, and we saw it unfold in real time, a system of bailouts in place, where you had moral hazard all over the place. That system was corrupt from the beginning, and it wasn't corrupted by the free market. It was corrupted by the federal government. It was corrupted by government policy, not allowing the free market to take hold. Now, that was bad. That was bad. The real tragedy of this is how we responded to it. How did we respond to it? More regulation. We've put more regulation on the financial markets, so not only are we starting to see the same sorts of things happening. Now, I'm not predicting another financial crisis, so I'm not predicting one either. But now you see these regulations trickling down and affecting the poorest people. In the United States, I'm not making any claims on anywhere else. Where because banks can't operate freely, they are risk averse, they can't give loans. The financial services that are provided in the poorest communities, the rural communities in America and urban communities in America, communities where people don't have jobs and it's called unbanked, where banks don't go into these communities because there's high risk for whatever reason. So you have these other that created opportunity. Check cashing services, short-term loan services that the left likes to demonize. They say they're taking advantage of the poor people. No, they're not. They're providing the poor people with a real service, and things like Dodd-Frank is taking that away. Part of the response to the financial crisis. In rural communities, you have small banks that can't exist anymore because they can't deal with these regulations. You've created a system of regulatory capture where big banks can get bigger, and they're able to, and because the smaller banks can't deal with the regulations, they go away. Now, I'm all for big banks. If they are big based on the market, I'm not against bigness. I'm against government bigness or smallness as a function of policy, and that's what we're getting, and it's all going to fall apart again. Or it's like, it creates a system, if it doesn't fall apart, what it is that it at least sucks out the dynamism. It sucks out the entrepreneurship. It's hard for capital formation. In the United States right now, it's the first time in history, I don't know the exact numbers, I can get them to you if you're interested. I have someone who I work with who deals with this, where we have less job formation, or less new business formation than new business is going out of business. That's a real problem. I mean, that statistic where you have fewer businesses being created and destroyed tells you something's not right. So anyway, that's what I would say about that. It's not a function of the market. Oh, the other quick thing that we've done in response is we've created this whole system of bailouts. As a result of the Dodd-Frank legislation, there's this body that can identify different institutions within the economy as SIFIs. Systemically important financial institutions. They can name anything a SIFI that they want. The moment you become a SIFI, you become a bailout, someone who can be bailed out. As soon as you can be bailed out, then you don't have that most powerful thing that the market provides, which is the instinct to survive. Because you got mommy state back there in the bail you out. And that's a problem. Yes?
We must know a bit about the regulations in the USA. So how does it look like globally? What is the connection between regulations and economic freedom? Maybe there is a trend
That's a really good question, but I also like to go back to your earlier question about global financial crisis. So the overall trend has been deregulation. There's no doubt about it. I think Poland has been one part of that game as well, because a lot of economies, when you guys got your independence and new chapter from former Soviet Union, they injected fresh beginning there. And a lot of African countries and Asian countries, they saw the danger of over-regulation. And some regulations, they've been having it for long years, but they didn't simply use it. They didn't know what to do with it, but it has been burdening economic activity. So all in all, the general trend has been deregulation, and therefore injecting greater economic dynamism. But regulation is only one part of the equation. There's other parts of the equation. Again, rule of law, and taxation, fiscal policy, and monetary policy. Unless you have all those things in perspective and in place, in order, you cannot have real dynamic economic growth. Now, the financial crisis we had to go through. I still remember this big headline from the Washington Post. It says, summer of 2008, the demise of American capitalism. They said American capitalism is gone, it's dead, and it's time to think about something alternative, something else. And I thought that was really big, premature statement. The demise of American capitalism. You can drop American capitalism. Basically what they were saying is the end of free market system or something. But if you take, again, step back, what you saw back in 2007 and 2008, leading up to the global financial crisis, it's not that we didn't have any regulations. We already had regulations in the United States and European Union level, but we didn't use them properly. And government perpetuated bad practice in a way. So the problem is not with the system itself, but how we actually used it. Maybe in some cases, the government were complacent. In the name of economic growth, they propelled unnecessary home ownership. Sounds like everybody should have a home, but it's not the case. So we had a very bad sort of things creeping into the system, and therefore collectively, I think, we had to pay heavy price. But now let's come back to today. But what do we have as a global system? We still have a free market system. We still want to have a functioning free market capitalism, not socialist, not central planning. I mean, if you still want to have those, let's do that. Then you'll have something like Venezuela and Argentina. Argentina is a good example. They said, no more capitalism. I want to have socialist policy, central planning. That's what they've been doing until last year. We know what happened to Argentina. The great country, great people, great wine, great natural resource. They couldn't really compete against other countries, like other competitive economies. But now, new president in Argentina, he realized it's not the central planning, it's not socialist policy. What we need is engagement with the rest of the world through open markets and regulatory efficiency. At least that's the direction the new president of Argentina is trying to take. We'll see what happens there, but it's a good thing that they changed their thinking mode there from socialist policy to free market policy.
I would like to ask regarding the question before the crisis and stuff about Ireland, because it's the second country
Yes,
in Europe
yes.
after Switzerland. That's the highest economic invoice, that because they were one of the countries that were bailed out, yes, and they were in the whole bubble. Yeah, and how is that possible?
I must say, you guys are really great. These questions are really, really right on, because you mentioned two important countries, Switzerland and Ireland. I know you asked about Ireland, but I want to talk about Switzerland a bit first. Switzerland is not a member of the European Union. It's not a member of the Euro. It's very much, its own independent, free trading nation. Yes, it still has a certain level of government spending, but Swiss economy, as we know, it's very much innovative. It's very competitive. It's very flexible. It's very open. So you can achieve things outside the context of European Union or those straitjackets, as long as you maintain these good policies. Now, coming back to Ireland. Yes, Ireland, man, they really paid a heavy price. Their bankings were collapsing. Government came in, nationalized those big banks, and a lot of political price here and there. But through the process, let's remember, the banking and financial sector was one dimension of the Irish economy. They had functioning market system, other parts of the functioning market system in place. One of them is, again, rule of law, open markets. Ireland is a trading nation. They do export a lot, they do import a lot. They had this kind of basic free market system in place. What they had to pay was this banking system collapsing. In order to address that issue, what they have done, the government, the succeeding government since the financial crisis, they took the austerity measures. They cut down government spending. Their public workers, they have to embrace lower wages. They have to really went through 2 years of very strong and effective austerity program, constraining their spending. Now, where is this Celtic tiger? Many people said Celtic tiger is dead, but it seems to me Celtic tiger is coming back. Up until last year, Irish economy is the fastest growing economy within the Eurozone. So you can make things turn around as long as you remain committed to economic freedom and good policies that can promote economic freedom. We hope we don't bore you to death, so please let us. If I may, you look very serious. I want to have at least one question from you.
Okay, I cannot ask one question. I want to talk about the transparency, because you have mentioned it several times already. And especially since the Panama Papers leak,
Yes.
there has been a lot of discussion going on transparency of politicians, on their taxes, their income being public, and as far as I'm concerned, it already works in Norway, or Scandinavian countries, but there is a conflict between the transparency and privacy of these people here. And are you willing to give up privacy for more freedom if it's going to bring something good?
I mean, that's another excellent question. You mentioned about transparency, but at the same time, you shared another important term, which is privacy. The whole Panama paper incident is not something simple, just reporting whatever corruption. It's really a complex matter. I mean, it has a component of as you mentioned, transparency as well as protection of privacy. We do not know true intention of why that Panama paper became available to public, but what we do know is that in some cases, I think we have to look at this whole incident country by country and case by case. Some countries, simply those people who have a lot of success and a lot of sort of financial means, they just want to make sure that they don't get overly taxed. And let's also make sure Panama is legally, it's a tax haven. It's what they've been doing in terms of their competitiveness. So in theory, what these individuals have done is not a crime. It's just following the rule. There are some politicians, maybe he had an extra slush fund or something, so somehow he wanted to make sure that that money is safe. Maybe that's why he put that money in Panama. I don't know, I'm just making up the story here. But those politicians and individuals will be judged by the citizens of that country. I think we have a certain countries that has to go through political change because of that. But what I'm saying is that it's about, again, transparency and privacy, and even to a certain degree, accountability. How we mix how we put these things together in one context, that's not easy. I mean, it will be talked about as we move on, and it will be discussed. But the bottom line is, all those things matter. Transparency matters, and privacy matters. How we can assure and preserve those things, I think that will be the debate we should have as we go forward.
I'm getting the sign that we're done. Let me just say one quick thing on that. We have to be careful that we don't let issues like that generate momentum for bad policies. So while sometimes that may lead to the need for some reforms, so often what happens is politicians take hold of that and they might say, we need more transparency, then that leads to a series of policies that are far beyond what were actually needed to address that certain situation. You see that already in the United States with the Panama Papers, with this series of international tax treaties, which would, I think, take away an element of privacy that's very important for businesses and individuals to have. So we say with all kinds of things, financial crisis, for example. But with that, I want to thank all of you for giving us some time today. I hope we didn't bore you too much.